What's going on YouTube? Bowden the Great with a informative guide to Lynn's Island's crops. I've seen a lot of questions regarding what food or crop is best for profits, as well as which is best for general healing and hunger purposes. But before we get into that, as always, do not forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of this super great, awesome content. Alright, well, let's get back into it. In this video, we will be first looking at the total grow time from seeding the crop, then look at the price, the sell price for each, and then finally looking at the healing properties. I won't make you sit here and literally watch the entire grow process, so I'll cut ahead once the seedlings have grown. Let's get these seedlings planted. Alrighty, so after an hour and a half of literally staring at the screen waiting for the crops to grow, we are finally fully mature and done. Now, going into this, I'm sure you can see I've fully invested in pumpkins in this massive farm to our rear, or north, whatever you want to call that. But in hindsight, after my whole study, I don't think that that was the best idea. I read someone else say that pumpkins were the way to go. But after my studies that we'll get into in just a second, that was not correct. So the first crop that was finished, which you could probably guess because it's kind of your starter, I guess, food, was blueberries, which took roughly 48 minutes. And this is IRL. I'm not going to, I think it was maybe a day and a half in-game, but roughly 48 minutes IRL. And the last crop that was grown was the passion fruit and the grapes, which the wheat ended up finishing maybe 2 minutes before, but it was fairly close. Now, before we get into the cost, obviously this is only just a crop of each one of these is just kind of one plot or lattice, so I've kind of just magnified out just so it's a little bit easier numbers. So we're gonna make a few assumptions, which I'll list out right here. Firstly, we're not going to factor in the cost of the actual crops themselves. I'm just going to go ahead and assume now that you started really small and grew them up to where we are now and just replanted everything. Secondly, I'm going to assume that the plots are based off of a 3x3 grid with the water tower in the center, which is kind of like what you would see here. So basically, 3x3, and I'm calling these plots, these individual little plots. Which I think actually in game they might be called plots, or farm, whatever. But yeah, so, and this brings us to our third assumption, is that we are going to assume that each yield will be 2 crops. So what I mean by yield is whenever you come here and you have one harvest, I guess, because for the most part it's 2, but sometimes you'll get a 5. It's not going to happen. I think you have maybe it's a 10% chance, maybe even around that, to get more than that. But for the most part, we're just going to blanket assume that you get 2 crops. For lattices, I'll go into that a little bit later. It'll be a little bit different, but for the basis of this deep dive, we're going to just assume across the board 2. It'll make things a little bit cleaner. So with that said, total crop yield, if you're looking at all these spots, will be 144 crops. So the way I got to that number was you've got 9, I guess, crop spots per plot / farm, and then so 2 times 9, 2 times 9 times 8, which is the 8 amount of the farm. So that's how. So basically based off 144 crops for each one. So while, obviously, if you go larger than this, you'll have a little bit more, and obviously if you go smaller, you'll have less. So, but this is just sort of a basis of talking point, and we will kind of just from here at least find out what the best crop per minute, gold per minute will be based on all the crops. So let's start with the most profitable crop, which honestly, I did not expect this. Maybe I just don't do enough thinking in my life, but I did not anticipate that at all. The most profitable crop is actually the flowers. So you're talking lavender, marigold, and roses, which the biggest reason why they're so much more profitable is because their quick grow time at 61 minutes, which is the fastest is obviously, as I said earlier, the blueberries, and at 48 minutes, and then the flowers are at 61, so it's pretty close to that. Plus, they sell for five flowers for 5 gold, which is a 1-to-1 trade-off, which is what you really want. So you're looking at, so based on my assumptions that I mentioned earlier, we're looking at 2.4 gold per minute, or I'm gonna probably just say GPM just because acronyms are cool and it makes things seem more official, I think. Obviously, like I said a second ago, if you increase the amount of plots, that number will increase. But this is just kind of just a base starting point across the board. The next profitable crop is the one that I've actually heard the most people say that this is the most profitable and that this is the way to go, which I kind of thought so too, but just based on my level of laziness, on especially with you're going into the caves, it's a lot more time to manage it. But if you can guess, it's actually the bread is the second most profitable crop, I get, or food is probably a better term. But with that said, it's obviously a lot more time intensive. So the wheat themselves, they take roughly, hold on, I'm having to sift through all my numbers, 86 minutes to grow to mature. And then after that point, though, you have to take did not mean to do that, but here we are, because I have plenty in my inventory. To take that to a windmill, input your wheat into the windmill, to which then it yields out your flour. And then you take the flour, put it in the furnace. And so luckily for us, I had a bunch of the wheat and everything in my inventory. So what I basically did was I quickly ran based on 144, a yield of 144 wheat, ran to the windmill and quickly just dumped in 140, because obviously you can only do it in increments of 5, so you can't put 144. And thus we yielded actually 144 wheat turned into 232 flour, which then from there run to the furnace. And I had the timer going the entire time, so this is relatively accurate timing. Ran to my furnace, which you probably could cut down time by putting everything a little bit closer, but ran to my furnace, baked all the bread, and it came out with 52 bread. So if you do the math out, 52 times 5 is, sorry, I'm having to consult my notes, is 260 gold, which comes out to be roughly 2.3 GPM, which is obviously just under the flowers, and there's a lot more steps involved. So kind of comparatively, I would rather just do nothing and get a lot more gold from flowers and having to do all those extra steps. But bread is very useful for healing yourself and hunger satiation, which we'll get into just a little bit later once we start talking about health and hunger. So the next most profitable, surprisingly to me, was banana. I thought that banana and pumpkins and watermelons would actually grow at the same rate, but bananas actually grow at the same rate as the flowers do, which is 61 minutes. And they sell for their biggest hang-up, though, which is why they're not on the same tier as the flowers, is because they only sell for 5 bananas for 4 gold. So that's kind of their biggest hang-up. Still certainly useful when it comes to healing yourself, kind of. Not really. They're a decent option, but still, flowers are probably the way to go. And this brings up the least profitable, which I guess looking at how I've done my entire farm, I kind of screwed it. But yeah, so this brings us to the least profitable, which is pumpkins and watermelons. Blueberries, you can't really anticipate blueberries to be profitable, but pumpkins, basically, they take 78 minutes to grow. Pumpkins and watermelons, 78 minutes to get to grow. Sell for 5 for 5, which is still a solid deal. And blueberries come in at which is a gain of 1.8 GPM, and then blueberries are right at 1.8, and yeah, so, but you can't really expect blueberries to beat out some of these other crops you can't get naturally. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, for the profitable, I mean, really, it's it's all about the flowers, which I did not anticipate going into this. So if I guess talking point though, if you spend a lot of time in the caves and really not much time tending to your farm, then maybe yeah, one of these a little bit longer growing like pumpkin or watermelon might be more advantageous for you. But this is, I mean, pumpkins and watermelons, it takes about 2 in-game days. So if you're gone for that long, then maybe that's more of your speed. But if you're kind of more around your base, building your base, then flowers are definitely your better options. So let's move into the best hunger and health options. And don't forget, to interject a little bit, I will talk about the lattice fruits because they're not in my opinion, while they are valuable, they're not really comparable because crops take up space and lattices can sort of go really anywhere. Just to talk about the cost though, they are definitely not worth selling at all. They grow the slowest at 90 minutes and they sell for absolute garbage. They sell for 5 for 5, but their GPM is zero point 0.3. So just because of the fact that you just have the one, and then you usually yield 3 for here. So comparatively, I said, for the rest of the stuff, I said that each harvest would be 2. For this, you're probably talking 3. In that case, it was 5, but usually for the most part, it's 3. So yeah. So let's move on to the best health and hunger options, which in my opinion, you have a lot more options, which we'll get into later. So for the most part, I'll kind of just start from the bottom and work my way down. But blueberries heal for 7 health and 15 hunger. Bananas heal for 8 health and 19 hunger. Pumpkins heal for 8 health and 40 hunger. Watermelons heal for 8 health and 45 hunger. And bread heals at 25 health and 50 hunger. Obviously, if you're looking at the straight numbers, bread is the best. But one big thing to consider, this is what I was talking about, that it's up to the user, is stack size. So now it's all freaking dark, but yeah. So talking about stack size, if you notice right here, I've got the passion fruit, which stacks at 20, and then here you've got bread, which stacks at 5. Which if you're fighting, for instance, the void beast, and you're constantly moving around, you're doing a lot of damage, then you may not want only a stack size of 5. You maybe want something that's got a little bit more stack size to it. For example, pumpkins are 10. So that's sort of kind of gives you, it's sort of up to your own discretion on what you prefer. Personally, what I recommend is, like I said earlier, kind of lazy. So I prefer not to have to go through the hassle of growing wheat. I personally prefer to just kind of do something more like have the option of, grapes or passion fruit, just given their stack size, and then something like pumpkins or watermelons, just given they satisfy hunger so much more. You're basically at full hunger with just eating 2 of those, and they stack for, well, the pumpkins stack for 15, which is definitely the way to go. So I would definitely recommend, or sorry, I keep saying pumpkins when I say watermelons. Basically the same thing though, right? But yeah, so watermelons, yeah, stack for 15, and then grapes for 20. The grapes and the passion fruit are great for combat, which is why they're nice, because of the high stacks and plus their health, which we'll talk about in just a second as well. So not to go ahead and get ahead of my skis. So yeah, kind of like just to kind of synopsis the health and hunger options. If you don't mind the extra work and small stack size, then go bread. But if you are kind of lazy like myself and prefer not to have to switch out, or just continuously add to your stack, then use kind of a combination of passion fruit and watermelon. Passion fruit whenever you're actually physically in combat, and then once you've maybe defeated the enemies, or are moving on to the next area, throw in a couple watermelons, eat one or two, fill your hunger back up, and then get moving. So this kind of brings me to what I was talking about with the lattices, with the passion fruit and grapes. It's kind of difficult, and I started this with the anticipation of just blanket covering everything, but after I kind of got into everything, I realized that you can't really compare passion fruit and grapes to everything else because of I guess how they grow. Because passion fruit and grapes do not require any sort of water source, which is makes things actually super helpful. But yeah, so pretty much, obviously the lattices grow. You can grow them on the sides of these actual farms and plots. So they're sort of, in my opinion, they're sort of more balanced healers between. They're a little bit more balanced between hunger and health regen, but a lot more beneficial on the health side. Like I said earlier, grapes heal for 15 and hunger for 11, and passion fruit heals for 18 and hunger for 8. But you're mainly going to be using these guys for healers, just based on, because that right there, passion fruit is 7 under what bread is. So and it stacks, and it's 4 times the stack size. They do take 90 minutes to grow, which I mentioned earlier. So personally, what I recommend doing with these guys is just, as you're getting your farm going and you're planting, flowers and a combination of flowers and watermelon for food, and then flowers to sell. Just go ahead and start putting lattices and building lattices around the perimeter of that farm. And I've got it kind of in the entrance of my base, but yeah. Go ahead and start building lattices around the perimeter of your farm, and as you find, grapes and passion fruit in the caves, just slap them onto your lattices, and just when you come back and they're harvested, just pick them and then plant more. Just keep planting them until you just have a massive farm of these guys. And then once at this point in time, if you're especially if you're new starting off, you'll be at the void beast or void. I can't remember off the top of my head. Void boar. You'll be at the void boar, and they'll be beneficial for you to be using. Let's see. I think that really kind of brings us to the end. Yeah. So to kind of just wrap things up, this kind of ended up being a little bit longer winded of a video than I anticipated, just because there's a lot of information to kind of go through. Especially the fact that I spent pretty much an hour and a half just sitting here watching these guys pop off. So that was fun. So don't ever let anyone tell you that I don't love you because I just sat here for an hour and a half watching digital crops grow. Anywho, to sort of wrap things up, your flowers are going to be your top tier money makers, and for health and hunger, like I said before, I personally prefer the passion fruit and watermelon combo over bread, but if you like bread, I'd say absolutely go for it. But yeah, I hope this video helped you out. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I just haven't really had the time because it does take a lot of time. So hopefully this video helped you out. If you have any questions or comments, or if you disagree with anything that I have to say, please drop it in the comment section below. I am always open for better opinions, or other opinions that are not mine. So please drop it in the comment section below, and as always, do not forget to like and subscribe. Peace out, YouTube.